All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Garrett Sheehan. I'm President and CEO of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce, and we appreciate all of you coming here for this event that's put on by many chambers of commerce. First, I want to thank our host, Quinnipiac University. Let's give them a big round of applause. In a few moments, we'll hear from Bob Stefanowski, and then later this morning, Governor Ned Lamont. We appreciate both candidates participating in this event. I want to thank all of the chambers that have helped put this event together. As you may know, we are doing legislative forums across the region in partnership with many chambers, and I want to take a moment to thank all of those chambers of commerce: the Cheshire Chamber of Commerce, the Madison Chamber of Commerce, the Milford Regional Chamber of Commerce, the Orange Chamber of Commerce, Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce, and the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to all of our chambers. They really do make a difference across our region. And on the screen, you'll see all of our annual investors here at the Chamber. We do appreciate their support. It's through their generous support that we're able to put on this programming and much more throughout the course of the election season. And as I said, Quinnipiac University, a great chamber member with us and our host for today. And I want to welcome up Dean Adam Roth, the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences here at Quinnipiac University, to say a few words. Dean Roth.
Thank you very much, Garrett, and welcome everybody to Quinnipiac's North Haven campus. We're delighted you can join us in this state-of-the-art facility where we house our School of Medicine, Nursing, Health Sciences, our law school, and also our Graduate School of Education. We're delighted you can join us for this very important, critical forum and opportunity to hear from Governor Ned Lamont and candidate Bob Stefanowski on important issues that affect the business community in our region. Thank you very much to the regional chambers who have helped organize this event, and especially to the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce in particular. Garrett, thank you very much for all of your work today. Tamika Miller, our Vice President of Marketing and Program Development in the Chamber, Kerry Ambrosio, Public Policy and Strategic Communications Specialist, and from Quinnipiac, Leah Richards, our Assistant Director of Facilities and Event Management, and Bethany Zamba, our Vice President for Strategy and Community Relations. We really appreciate the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce's role as an advocate for Quinnipiac and for local and regional businesses, and certainly as a strategic promoter and partner of regional economic development and growth. Of course, special thanks to Governor Ned Lamont and our Republican candidate Bob Stefanowski for their participation today and for the time that they've devoted to be here for this important forum, and to many other distinguished and esteemed guests who have joined us as well. Frankly, I think the location for a forum like this couldn't be more fitting, because at Quinnipiac, one of our core pillars is focusing on training students to become civic and public and professional leaders in the 21st century. And we do that through a variety of our academic programs, whether that might be majors in political science or civic leadership programs like our QU in DC Immersion Experience, training them to become civically engaged while at Quinnipiac and beyond, helping them to understand the importance of engaging in the democratic process of voting, and instilling in them a lifelong respect and appreciation for open dialogue and debate. QU is really part of Connecticut's workforce development solution in a variety of ways. We train students across our 8 schools and our College of Arts and Sciences to be prepared for the jobs of the future in a rapidly changing workforce where the skills and competencies that are needed are improving and evolving rapidly. In fact, almost more than a quarter of our students who are coming in this year are engaged in what we call accelerated dual degree programs. That means they'll be earning a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in 4 years rather than the traditional trajectory of 5 or 6 years, preparing them earlier and sooner to enter the workforce and to help solve the needs of our regional community. And about that workforce, QU is a net importer of talent to the region. It's interesting to note that about 30% of our students come from Quinnipiac, from Connecticut, But over 40% of our alums actually reside in Connecticut, meaning many of them stay here after graduation and contribute to economic development in the region. And QU is an important driver of economic development in the region. In fact, we contribute over $2 billion annually to the Connecticut economy through direct and indirect sources, with direct sources equating to over $1 billion of that. And we are all, Quinnipiac, our employees, our students, very proud to call Connecticut home. Our state ranks among the best in terms of quality of life among all states in the country. We have tremendous public schools. We have incredible suburbs. We have very low crime rates. We have vibrant yet extremely manageable cities. We have wonderful recreational opportunities and incredible and diverse healthcare solutions for our community as well. All of which are just a few of the reasons why we're all so proud to call Connecticut our home. And so today, as we're thinking about our home, we are really looking forward to hearing from Governor Ned Lamont and our Republican candidate Bob Stefanowski about their vision and goals for our home, Connecticut, and particularly around issues of the state budget, taxes, transportation, workforce, and inclusive growth. So thank you very much for attending today, and I look forward to a wonderful discussion. Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you, Dean Roth and Quinnipiac University. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jim Perito. Jim is a partner with Haller & Sage and also the chair of our Government Affairs Committee. I also want to recognize Karen Del Vecchio, who is the chair of our Quinnipiac Chamber Government Affairs Committee, and all of the members of our Government Affairs Committee who helped us put this together. Jim?
Thank you. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you, Dean, for hosting this great event here. Bob, it's great to see you here today. So let's just start in.
Yeah.
We have a limited amount of time overall.
Sure.
As you know, there's no questions from the audience, but these questions have all been solicited from the members of all the chambers. So we hope to try to focus on concerns that the chambers are absolutely. First question, workforce. Addressing workforce has obviously been a priority in the business community across all of our industries, across businesses of all sides. In June, there were approximately
I didn't even see that.
Sorry about that.
I thought I was sitting on my pen or something.
I figured if you couldn't hear us, you'd say we can't hear you. There's approximately 105,000 job openings in Connecticut in this past June. What's your assessment of the labor shortage, and what actions would you take both in the short term and the long term to address it?
The first one, I'm going to give you a little bit of a long answer. First of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be home. I grew up in New Haven. And then we moved to North Haven when I was in second grade. Mike Perito, your first selectman, has done an amazing job. The university, just an amazing, and I'm not just trying to butter you guys up, you've done an amazing job in the last 10 years in terms of increasing your profile, helping out in the community. I can't tell you I always love your polls, I have to say that, but you gotta... You got to call them how you see them. I get it. You know, and then the business community. You guys are the life and blood of Connecticut. You really are. And it's all about providing more jobs. It's all about kind of partnering with the community. And I thank you for sticking it out, the business leaders that are here, because pretty much every business I go to has an offer from Florida or North Carolina, or, you know, where there's lower taxes, lower real estate, in some cases better labor supply. So I appreciate you sticking it out. So with respect to the question, I think you have to start at a high level, which despite there being that many job openings, this is not a good economy. People are going to be opening up their 401k plans and their 529 plans in about a week, and they're going to see a 25% reduction in their savings, which is not a good thing. CNBC came out about 3-4 weeks ago, said that they rated Connecticut. They gave the economy an F and the cost of living an F. We had a CBIA meeting, a small business group in Hartford. 89% of the people surveyed said they think the cost of doing business in Connecticut is going to go up next year. So we really need to try a different approach. What we've been doing for the last 12 years has been wrong. With respect to workforce development, I think a lot of it, I've got 3 daughters, and they all kind of defaulted to 4-year degrees. And I think a 4-year degree is terrific. And one of the things I like about a 4-year degree, I went to Fairfield University, and Quinnipiac is the same way. You can get a mixture between skills to get a good job and then the overall training to understand what's going on in the world. And have a liberal arts kind of perspective combined with that professional perspective. And I think there's some schools in Connecticut that do that very well. But a 4-year degree is not for everybody. And there's a lot of kids that can go to a trade school and want to be an electrician or want to work in construction or want to work in medicine. And these kids, I can say kids, I just turned 60, these kids are coming out with 3, 4, 5 job offers. You know, what's wrong with that? Nothing. I think the other thing Connecticut faces, I see it in my daughter. She went to UC Berkeley. I wasn't really popular out at UC Berkeley, but it's a very, very liberal, which is fine. I love her to death. She was a social welfare major, and she wants to help homeless people, which is terrific. But you know what else she wants to stay in Connecticut? She wants a vibrant community. She wants cities where she can go out and have some fun. She wants young people around. She wants a sense of that culture. I started in New Haven, moved to North Haven. We had the Coliseum. I remember going to watch Pele. You probably don't remember him, but best soccer player in the world. Going to concerts, the New Haven Nighthawks. Hartford had the Whalers. I met my wife in the Gold Building in Hartford at Price Waterhouse in 1987. We'd go out to dinner after work. There were vibrant restaurants. There were things to do. We've got to get that back. Our cities have been in decline. So part of it is creating an environment. And then the third one, if you want young people to stay here, you got to make it more affordable. I mean, it doesn't seem like the young people today want it. It's a little bit different. You know, I graduated Fairfield. I was working at Price Waterhouse within 60 days. Next was buy a house, raise a family. Kids today, I think, are a little bit different. But for those that want to build a family, you have to have affordable housing, and you have to have property taxes that make sense. We don't have that right now. So I think it's a multifaceted approach. You got to create the right skill set. We've got a big mismatch today between the skills that business want and the skills that are available. And Quinnipiac and schools like that can play an amazing role in that, particularly in the medical field and the business field. And it's a tremendous opportunity, which is why we need to invest in education more in Connecticut. The last thing I'll say is the curriculum. My mom passed away a few years ago. We were cleaning out the basement, and I found the birdhouse that I made in can't even remember the year, 76, I think, in woodworking. I had metal shop. And I'm not saying that's for everybody either, but we have to start to introduce some of these practical skills so that kids that have an affinity for it realize it early. So there's a lot we can do. And the other benefit we have is a $6 billion budget surplus in Hartford. We're sitting on $6 billion. I know this isn't an economic talk, but why wouldn't we give some of that back now for job training, to support programs? We need more apprenticeship programs. So there's a lot we can do, but when you're in a situation with 2 F ratings, 1,000 job openings that aren't filled, second highest taxes, it hasn't worked. And I'm not going to make this political today, I promise. But I think we need a different approach.
So, you sort of alluded to this, both tax relief and tax cuts. In the past year, there's been several tax relief measures that were passed. However, many of the business owners and residents are still hoping for additional. So, Bob, you've previously called on the legislature to use 1/3 of the state's $3.8 billion budget surplus for tax relief. What specifically are you thinking, if you're governor, that you would prioritize for that kind of tax relief?
Yeah, so I would argue, first of all, there's another $2 billion surplus coming this year, so it's actually $6 billion. And that was money that we got from the federal government. That was not monopoly money that rained down from the sky. These are your federal tax dollars. So there's a bit of a shell game going on, paying the federal, and then we'll slide it over to the state and say we have a massive surplus. That's not a surplus. That's our money as well. But we introduced a program called Connecticut First. And I'm not going to go through all the elements. Fight inflation and reduce state taxes. With respect to business, First of all, pay off this unemployment insurance loan that we took out in COVID. But what better use of COVID money that we got from the federal government to pay off the unemployment insurance loan that's strangling business? So we're going to do that. Most states have already done it. When I win, we're going to do it. We're going to create a way to get the SALT deduction back. And I don't think President Trump should have put it in. This is so that you no longer get a deduction on your federal return for state and local taxes. Connecticut is a net giver to Washington. We send much more money to Washington than we get back, and eliminating the SALT deduction makes it worse. So I can't control that at a federal level, but on the state return, we're going to give people to take property taxes up to $10,000. Get a deduction on your state return. That'll reduce your state income taxes. That'll get about $600 of savings back. We should lower the sales tax. We've got the highest inflation in 40 years. We've got a $6 billion budget surplus, and we're collecting high sales tax on that. Should bring that down. Governor, there's a 1% tax on food. I almost went there. There's a 1% tax on food that's new. Why don't we eliminate that? I was in New Haven the other day where I first grew up on Pond Street, corner of Pond Street and Dixwell Avenue. There are people literally making a choice between whether they buy food or prescription medicine. So why are we taxing food more? So there's a lot we can do. We need to increase the deduction on the pass-through entity tax. That will help small business. My proposal says we should defer the diesel tax and the regular taxes on gas at least till the end of 2023, and let's see where we are. When we put a diesel tax on, the trucking companies don't pay that. Of course, they have to pass it through on goods and services, and then businesses have to pass that through on consumers. That's inflationary. So we should get rid of it. And regardless of who takes credit for the budget surplus, we have it. They call it a rainy day fund. Not today, literally, but it's pouring outside. People are filling their oil tanks half full. They're saying, I can't afford to fill it because if I do, I won't be able to afford food. Somebody the other day said they got a $1,000 Eversource bill. So I'm not going to turn this into a stump speech, but we got a program called, maybe I already did, but Connecticut First. We got a pragmatic plan. It leaves plenty of money to manage through a recession. It reduces cost for consumers and businesses now, and it'll accelerate job growth. I'm a supply sider. I would imagine if there's any economists here, they may not agree. But the more we can stimulate the economy, the more we can create job growth, the more taxes we're going to have coming in. You need to do it equitably, but that's how we get this economy moving. The town of North Haven is a perfect example of that.
Thank you. Let's move into housing. Connecticut's cost of living index is 121.6, apparently, making it the 8th most expensive state in the United States. The cost of housing obviously contributes heavily to this high cost of living, and we face a shortage of housing, and the cost of rents rise. Many barriers to homeownership still remain. So how would you work to address the housing shortage and the high cost of living?
Well, first of all, we need more affordable housing. We need more low-cost housing. I don't know where you break the line, but we need to create housing for kids starting out, young families starting out. We're going to give them a deduction as well for their property taxes and make it easier to build a family here. Affordable housing, I'm a product of affordable housing. We lived in a 3-family house over in New Haven. It was us on the bottom floor, my grandparents on the 2nd floor, and crazy Southern Connecticut students. I still remember the parties. I'm sure Quinnipiac's not like that. Crazy parties on the top floor. I still remember trying to sleep at night. My mom was born in that house. I was born there at St. Raphael's in New Haven. My dad came to us one day, said, we're moving to North Haven. And I said, I don't want to move. I don't want to get away. I used to call her Grammy. I don't want to move away from Grammy. I don't want to move away from my friends. And he said, the schools are better. My dad went to Hill House. He was a clerk in Southern Union Telephone Company for 30 years, never went to college, but they valued a college education. They didn't have much money to send us to private school. They said, we're moving to North Haven. First selectman, he's seen my house. It's a 2, and my dad's still there. He's 92. He may not vote for you no, he's going to vote for you. This is not a sob story about me being poor, but we had 2 bedrooms. I've got 3 sisters. There was a bunk bed, and then there was another bed. And I was actually in a converted closet. And when I started to grow, I had to curl up my feet because it was only 6 feet long. But it was a terrific upbringing, safe community, dinner at 5:30 every night. My mom went back to work. Long story short, one of my sisters went to Yale. She actually teaches here now, but I'm not supposed to say that. She teaches sociology. One went to UConn. One went to Albertus Magnus, and I went to Fairfield. It changed our life. So we have to create that. Now, on the other hand, we don't have time to get into it. I don't think the current 830G regulation works. It came in before the fall of the Berlin Wall. You think affordable housing's gotten better in Connecticut since the Berlin Wall fell? Of course it hasn't. So we need to work with the communities. Right now we use the stick. We say if you're not at 10% affordable housing, we're going to take funding away from you. That's not the way the state of Connecticut should work. We should be working collaboratively with mayors and first selectmen. We've got hundreds of abandoned buildings on the book in the state of Connecticut. Why not refurb some of those jointly? Create affordable housing. Why don't we find a plot of land and jointly develop it? So I'm very focused on providing it. I think it'll help stimulate job growth. We need to do it in the right way.
Let's go into transportation.
Yes.
So as we see this influx of federal dollars for the infrastructure development, transportation continues to be an opportunity for growth in the greater New Haven region, especially with the continued development of Tweed New Haven Airport to ensure that Connecticut remains competitive. If you were elected governor, what infrastructure projects would you prioritize to set Connecticut apart?
It's another one that we talk. Tweed's actually done a really good job. But one of the things you notice about Tweed is most of the flights they set are to get out of Connecticut. Florida, people that have moved down to Florida, they're spending 181 days in Florida to avoid and it happens. And I'm not criticizing anybody who does it, but that's the reality. We need to advocate what Connecticut has, the best universities in the world. Perfect spot between between New York and Boston. Great entrepreneurial spirit, beaches. So we need to start getting some flights coming in, not facilitating flights out. So that's number one. We've been talking about rail for years. The problem with Metro North, and I don't think you can do anything, it's the perfect definition of a monopoly. The price goes up and the service gets worse. Slower than it was 20 years ago. Now, I get a lot of, people beat me up for this. I think we got to bring in the private sector in the right way because we have $100 billion of debt in Connecticut. We talk about we have a budget surplus. That's great. We have $6 billion in the bank, but we got $100 billion of debt. My daughter came to me the other day. She says, "I want to buy a new car. I've got $20,000 in my bank account." I said, "Well, what's your credit card debt?" I'm not going to tell you what she said, but I said, "You're insolvent." She says, "What does that mean?" She's sociology, social services major. I said, "You got more debt than you've got cash. That doesn't mean you're rich just because you have it in a current account." State of Connecticut's the same way. So we have to stimulate private investment. One of the few things that works, I shouldn't say that. One of the things that works in Connecticut are the rest areas. They're not perfect, but they're efficient. You know why? It's because we partnered with a private equity firm called Macquarie. They developed it. They get 1% of the receipts. Connecticut gets 1% of the receipts. Now, you need to be careful. And I used to bring in private equity, and maybe these men and women can be sharks. You need somebody who's negotiated billion-dollar deals, which I have. I used to be the CFO of UBS and at GE. And you need to cut a fair deal. But we can dream about, making it 30 minutes from Hartford, from New Haven to New York, but unless we have the funding, it's never going to happen. We got to be realistic, and we got to take some approaches. I don't think train times are any quicker than they were 4 years ago. I don't think the traffic is any less than it was 4 years ago. And forget about this, transportation fund and lockbox. It doesn't work. We should be putting money aside for transportation, but if you do that, why do you need a lockbox? Basically, government's telling you we're going to put this money into the transportation, but we have to put a lock around it to protect ourselves from taking it out. We got to start being honest with people with the situation we're in, which is a problem. And we got to come out with some real solutions. We've got real solutions. That's why I'm looking forward to winning.
Keeping on transportation, so specifically with Tweed, what would you do to help that continue to grow as we've seen in the past few years?
Well, you got to work with the community. I know there's been a lot of discussion about, air traffic coming in, and there's always the not in my backyard. I think if it still has capacity, they should keep doing what they're doing. I don't know how many of you taken, is it Avalon, the flight to Florida? People rave about that flight. So maybe there's more opportunity to add flights. We need to support, with investment into the runway, into the facilities. But I'll tell you, I was up at Bradley the other day, meeting with them. They've got a ton of capacity as well. There used to be a flight on Aer Lingus that went to Ireland, and then people would jump to London. We should be bringing in international flights. But it all gets back to you have to have a reason for people to come to Connecticut. We used to be the insurance capital of the world up in Hartford. So I think you got to create the desire to come here, and then you got to put the infrastructure around it. Most of these airlines are looking for alliances with airports, and we need to look at that.
Let's talk about inclusive growth. Prioritizing inclusive growth is vital for the business community to thrive and ensure that the BIPAC-owned businesses are succeeding and that economic development is equitable. What priorities surrounding inclusive growth and economic development would you have if elected governor?
So I don't think we've done a great job with the cities. We've had 40 years of Democratic, and I'm trying not to make this a partisan election, but the reality is Democrats have been in control of the cities for 40 years, and it hasn't gotten any better. And I think both Democrats and Republicans want to help the cities. It's not like they don't. To me, it's a different approach. In my humble view, the Democrats have created a sense of dependency in the cities. And this is not about taking money away or cutting funding of programs. You need to help people that need help. But in my view, that's created a sense of dependency where people in cities, and in some cases the suburbs, are dependent on government. I'm going to create jobs. I'm going to create independence. We're going to provide the training. We're going to provide the stimulus. We're going to provide the trade schools. People in the cities don't want to be dependent on government. I was in New Haven the other day. I mentioned a couple times we had a press conference there. I had 3 people walk up to me, and I think some of the press thought it was a plant. Because the guy said, we haven't seen the governor in 4 years. It's about as bad as I've ever seen it. We're ready to try something different. I said, what's the biggest thing you want? He didn't say higher subsidies. He didn't even say affordable housing. You know what he said? Jobs. So here we have a situation with 1,000 open jobs. We have people in the cities that really do want to fill them, but they need better training. So that's what we can do. We need to connect the training to the people so that the skill sets are proper and create a sense of independence in the cities so they can grow and move up. That's what I did. I'm a product of the North Haven Public Schools and a Connecticut University. And more people, sometimes I get some grief, you're a rich guy running for governor. I'm not embarrassed about that. I won the lottery with my parents. I worked hard. And now I want to give back to the state. What's to be embarrassed about that? More people should have the opportunity that I had. And that's why we're running. There's a lot of ego in politics, and there's probably some ego with me too, but I will tell you that's the reason I'm running, because I want people to have the opportunity that I had. And I don't want to have to get on Avalon Airlines to go down to Florida to see my grandkids, to see the kids of my 3 daughters. And that's why we're going to win this election, because we're going to help the state of Connecticut get back on track.
Thanks.
Sorry to get agitated. There's so much opportunity here. That's what's frustrating. We just need to grab it. And we need to be optimistic about what we can do. And we can do.
Well, let's play into that, into the key industries we have in Connecticut and the Greater New Haven. So there's clearly life sciences is huge in the Greater New Haven area. What industries have you assessed are key to the state's success, and how would you support specifically those industries?
Perfect example. New Haven Biotech. Look what they've done. I know Vlad Korik, the head of biosciences. They just IPO'd for, billions of dollars. He started that business. He was a doctor at Yale. He started with, a piece of paper. It's $1 billion company. So you got bioservices in the New Haven area. You go up to Hartford. We need to get Hartford back to being the insurance capital of the world. There's no reason it shouldn't be. You go to the eastern part of Connecticut, we got defense. You go to the southern part of the state, you got financial services. You go to, I was in Ansonia the other day. They have acres upon acres of land. I can't remember the name of the company that's moved out. We need to redevelop that. It's a perfect manufacturing. Connecticut used to be about manufacturing. We have an opportunity here that no other state, think about it. Financial services, we got a specialty. Basic manufacturing, specialty. Biosciences, specialty. Insurance, specialty. Defense, what else do you need? If someone were to tell you, I've got a city that's midway between New York and Boston, next to one of the best universities in the entire world with a deep water port, you think you could make something out of that? Of course you could. Bridgeport. Why hasn't that worked? It's not because the residents of Bridgeport don't want it to work. It's because we haven't developed it properly and throw in a little bit of corruption, which doesn't help. That's why I'm so excited about this. We got the tools to do this, and we can do it. And I know it's going to be harder than the private sector, but ladies and gentlemen, we have an amazing opportunity here. We just got to grab it. And don't believe all the political nonsense about how great it is. Does anybody feel that it's more affordable than it was 4 years ago? Do you small business owners feel it's easier to do business than it was 4 years ago? Do you think the streets are safer than they were 4 years ago? Time for a change.
Let's talk about small business as you allude to them, okay? While it's key to attract the large companies to the state, small businesses are the backbone of our business community and often are the first to face any negative impacts on the community. How would you work to support the small businesses if elected governor? What would you do? What programs or what taxes would you cut for the small businesses?
Well, we talked about some of the taxes, bringing the pass-through entity tax back, paying off the unemployment insurance loan. The other thing that I hear from small business, a guy the other day said he had to hire a full-time person to deal with the paperwork, the regulation. Anybody want to guess how many taxes and fees we have in Connecticut? About 340. 340. I think it's 336. That's insane. My favorite one is the hypnotist registration fee. And this is nothing against hypnotists, but why are we charging a hypnotist to say there's an interior design registration fee? Most of these taxes cost more to collect than the revenue they're bringing in. And I just got the 10 minutes left sign. Do you have a 5-minute one too? Okay. The bottom 200 provide less than 0.5% of the revenues of the state of Connecticut. 200 taxes, that paperwork, and it's less than 1% of the revenue of the state of Connecticut. Sometimes there's no common sense in politics. Get rid of them. So my first day in office, we're going to find a director of revenue services who's going to agree with me. I'm going to stop collecting them. Now, if somebody wants to sue me for not collecting the hypnotist registration fee, have at it. And you know how much that's going to simplify this state? And then I'll put a bill in front of the legislature. Nobody's going to vote against getting rid of 200 taxes that deliver less than 1% of the revenue. So we need to streamline small business. We need to reduce the taxes. We need to make it easier to get business done in Connecticut. And yeah, did the past 4 years have you reduced a couple taxes? I guess so. But if we reduce taxes so much, why do 89% of the CBIA business owners think it's more expensive to do business and it's getting higher? One of the things I'm asking everybody to do in this election, focus on the facts. And if you think the facts support my opponent, vote for him. But if you think it's not as good as it could be, and you're willing to take a bit of a chance, I know electing somebody new is risky, but we need to take a chance. I'm not sure it could be that much worse. I was going to try to ride out the 10 minutes to make sure I didn't get asked anything else. I couldn't quite do it. I'm not as good a politician.
Okay. We've covered most of our topics here, but the last one before you get to do your closing questions, that last statement, business attraction. I think you sort of talked about this generally, the kinds of things you would do, but continually they face regulations passed through the state legislature, which often makes it difficult to do business here, and it hurts the state's reputation on business friendliness. So you sort of alluded to some of the things you would do to help new business come to Connecticut and fix our reputation. Are there maybe like 3 key points that you would focus on to sort of guide that activity?
I would say the ones we've talked about, taxes is number one. You could lump that with regulation, taxes and regulation, make it easier to do business. I was going to tell a story, but what do we have, 5 minutes? Very quickly, I was in Bridgeport. Guy opened up right next to Trumbull Gardens. I look in the corner. There's brand new machines to cut meat and make sandwiches. He opened it up in COVID because they have what's called in Bridgeport food deserts. You have to walk miles to get food. He said, I want to help the community. I said, how long's it been there? He said, 9 months. I said, why is that? He said, well, first the health inspector came in, then the building inspector came in, and then somebody else came in. It's sequential. Why don't we do it concurrently? Let's get all these people in there at the same time, so reduce regulation. The third one is we have to promote Connecticut. We don't do a very good job of marketing Connecticut. For every dollar we invest in tourism and reputation, between hotels, restaurants, we get $4 back. So you people are business people. If you got a return on investment of 4 to 1, what would you do? You wouldn't cut funding to that. You'd invest more. At least to that point of the efficient frontier. I'm going to get very academic, right? You get to the top of that efficient frontier, and then you think about stopping. But we are way down here. Another opportunity to drive it. So there's a lot we can do. Taxes, regulation, promoting Connecticut. We talked about how to build this workforce. Better collaboration with the colleges. It's gotten much better. There's more we can do. Practical experience and apprentice programs. There's a lot we can do.
Let me just follow up real quick on regulation. When you talk about the inspectors coming in from the town, that's on the town level. And we have 169 of these separate municipalities out there. What do you do from the state level to try to cut back on all the towns doing that?
Listen, most towns are run infinitely better than the state of Connecticut is. I can tell you North Haven is. You AAA rated, Mike? AAA rated. So on the one hand, you need to leave the towns and cities that are doing well alone. But in Bridgeport, I go out to Bridgeport. I don't want to be in the building. And I'm going to sit down and say, listen, Mayor Gannon, we got a bit of a problem here. This thing should be one of the top cities in the entire country. Let's talk. Now, I can't force them to do something because I do want to maintain local control. But I can have a bit of a discussion with them. And a lot of these cities, the mill rate is 50, 60 mills. When you're that high, you're essentially bankrupt. So it starts with fiscal discipline, support where it's needed. But I'm going to hold people accountable. If I give them a grant for $1 million to do something, I'm going to hold them accountable. It's about leadership.
So now's your chance with the 5-minute mark to tell the business community why it is that they should vote for you.
Well, first of all, don't believe the attack ads. I don't know. I would encourage you to watch the debate. The other day, it was yesterday. I'm losing time, lack of track of time. BobForGovernor.com, BobForGovernor.com. Please look at that debate because it cuts through all of the false on the tech ed. I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm socially moderate. I support a woman's right to choose. Roe v. Wade is codified in Connecticut state law. It's not going to change. It's not going to happen. You're going to hear attack ads for the next 40 days. And you know why? Because my opponent doesn't want to talk about the economy. He doesn't want to talk about the crime rate. He doesn't want to talk about parental rights. So put it aside and focus on the facts. Now, if you honestly think it's safer than it was 4 years ago, and you honestly think the business community, it's easier to do business than it's 4 years ago, and you think that the infrastructure is better than 4 years ago, vote for the guy who's coming in next. That's all I can tell you. If you think it is, then vote for him. And you're going to hear a lot about how great it is and how all the programs that came in. But after it's done, step back and think if it's better than it was. If it's not, take a bit of a risk. We've had 12 years of Democratic governors and 40 years of a Democratic legislature. It's like the guy in New Haven told me, it can't get any worse. I'm going to take a risk. That's what I would ask you to do. I'm a good guy. Don't agree with these grainy attack ads. I don't know how they find these mean shots of my face. I really don't. My kids are starting not to like me after seeing it. Right? I'm a good guy. I'm doing this for the right reasons. I don't have all the answers. I know it's a lot harder than I can imagine, but I'm going to move the state in the right direction. And you know what? I'm going to put you first. I feel like I work. Sometimes we feel like we work for governor. This is a job interview. I'm interviewing to be your servant. And I'm going to put, whether you're Democrat, Republican, whether you vote for me or not, I owe it to you to support the hell out of you, and that's what we're going to do when we win. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Bob Stefanowski. We appreciate it. We're just going to take about 2 to 3 minutes. Governor Lamont's on site here. We'll have him come in, and we'll get it underway with Governor Lamont. All right, everyone, thank you again. We are ready to get underway. We want to be able to hear from Governor Lamont. Appreciate everyone sticking around, hearing Bob Stefanowski this morning. I also do want to recognize we have elected officials in the room with us. We have Mayor Lauren Garrett from the town of Hamden. We have Mike Frieda from the town of North Haven. I know we have Senator Cabrera and Representative Josh Elliott with us as well. I'm not sure if I missed anyone else. Oh, who's that?
Matt Hoy.
Oh, Matt Hoy, excuse me. First Selectman Matt Hoy from Guilford is with us as well. Matt will be recognized at our annual awards coming up on October 13th, so don't want to miss Matt. See you back there, Matt. And also, I know we have President Mark Camille from Albertus Magnus College with us as well. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Jim and Governor Lamont. Jim.
Thank you, Garrett. Again, welcome to everybody. Welcome, Governor. It's great to see you again. We were just saying before we started, it was 4 years ago when we had our discussion in Milford, and it was time flies, apparently. Let's get started. So let's talk first about workforce, if we could. Addressing workforce needs have been a priority to the businesses across all industries and across all business sizes. In June, there were 105,000 job openings in the state of Connecticut. What's your assessment of the labor shortage, and what actions have you taken, and how else do you hope to address this issue, both in the short term and the long term, if you're reelected?
All right, well, good morning, everybody, and Jim and Garrett, good to be back. I consider it a real opportunity in some ways, but let me back up for a second. I like being back here at Quinnipiac, first of all. I was probably here first year 30 years ago helping to build your telecommunications system. That's what I did for about 30 years. First guy coming out of business in many a year, so I'm sort of an expert on the Quinnipiac conduit system. I'm here in a very, very different time. Actually, I checked with you, the security guy, on the way here. I just said, before I say that, is the system working okay? It didn't crash last week or something, because I thought that would have been a bad intro. I'll say on the workforce, think about this, Jim. 4 years ago, when we sat down, Wall Street Journal had just written their piece, "What's the matter with Connecticut?" GE had left. Last one out, turn out the lights. Chronic fiscal crisis, which is how the outgoing budget officer described things. And so I came into office. I figured, first thing I had to do was get our fiscal house in order, and we can talk about that in a minute. And that's a precondition to getting our economy going again. And so you're absolutely right. Today, first time in my lifetime, and I'm pretty old, we have about 115,000 jobs. They're unfilled right now. We'd have a negative, unemployment if we got those jobs. So I've made the biggest commitment to workforce development by a factor of 5 in the history of the state. Mostly our money, some of it a federal ARPA money. And I'll tell you how I think about it. I think about it, we're working very closely with the business community. We got Advanced CT, we got the Workforce Council. Businesses large and small are helping us put together what is the job training specs that you need. And some people you need 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. Many people say, I want a 18-week certificate program to be a laser welder. So we're putting together programs like that. You can get a job. You can be a nurse, fintech, in a shorter period of time. Continue your education, but you're earning while you're learning. The other thing I think about when it comes to workforce is, we've got the greatest universities in the world right here, and the best and the brightest come to Connecticut. So I've talked to all the business leaders. I urge you to do the same thing. Get in front of these students while they're still in school. Think about the apprentice program. Think about the internship programs that you've got right now. We put in place a tax cut, I think my first or second year, that said we'll pay any business, large or small, a $5,000 a year tax credit per employee to the degree to which you're paying down their student debt, $5,000 a year. So, Jim, that's a long way of saying I want the best and the brightest to stay in Connecticut, and I want the businesses to have an incentive to hire here in Connecticut.
Great, thank you. Let's talk about tax relief. So the state had a $4.3 billion budget surplus in fiscal year 21, and the state's rainy day fund is up to about $3.3 billion. I'm given these numbers, so you probably know the numbers better than I. While you proposed and passed tax relief measures this past year, many business owners are still hoping for additional tax relief for both the businesses and the residents who faced a high cost of living here. Are you considering additional tax relief measures given the positive state of our budget? And if so, what exactly are the measures you're thinking about?
Well, think about this question compared to 8 years ago. Oh my God, stuck with another fiscal crisis, massive deficits. What are we going to do? How are we going to manage through this? 4 balanced budgets later, and Jim is asking me, what are we going to do with the surplus? I'll tell you what we've done to date. I've done everything I can to get people back to work. I talked about workforce. I don't know where you stand on this. We had the biggest expansion of daycare and childcare in the history of the state. I did that because it gives our kids the very best opportunity of life and allows mom and dad to get back to work. And I did something else that I'd love your feedback on. I've been in this game now for a little while, and every time it's we can't get our fiscal house in order, unfunded pension liability, we're running the marathon and cement overshoes. So we've paid down almost $6 billion in pension debt. It's not like the cash is just sitting there in the bank. We've paid down almost $6 billion. And that says we're getting our fiscal house in order and we keep our commitments. B, it says the credit rating agencies, instead of lowering our ratings, are saying that you're doing a little bit better, Connecticut. And C, when it comes to tax cuts, it means it's going to save us almost $500 million a year for the next 25 years. So I think put that into perspective. I also did, working with the legislature, about $650 million in tax cuts this last cycle. Going through pretty heavy inflation. That was everything from being, I think, the 3rd or 4th state in the country to reduce the gas tax. We now have one of the lowest gas prices in the country. We did everything I can really to help middle class folks, get through this. We eliminated the small business entity tax, and we've done a lot in terms of investment tax credits for manufacturing going forward. But your real question is, what do you want to do going forward? Maybe we're going to have a surplus at the end of this fiscal year. Maybe we're not. But don't spend the surplus we don't have. That's the type of thing that got this state into such a mess over the last 30, 40 years. If I look at things, I really want to make sure, most important to me is fiscal stability. Make sure we keep our rainy day fund. I did a debate the other day, and my opponent spent that rainy day fund 5 times over. And I'll tell you, we're heading into what could be a real recession. And I want to make sure we don't do what we've done yesteryear, which is hand out a lot of tax rebates right before an election. Oh, my God, things are worse than I thought they were. We have to raise taxes. That's not going to happen. So we do have about 15% or $3.5 billion set aside. So, yes, I'm going to be taking a hard look at the corporate income tax. I'll be taking a look at the gasoline taxes, which we reduced that by 25 cents, see what we can reasonably continue going forward, look at some of the underlying regulations. I got a great guy named Mark Boughton. He was the Republican nominee for governor last time until he wasn't, and he's now running a DRS for us. So we're going to be taking a hard line at seeing how we can streamline things and reduce costs.
So you're going to wait and see until how things work out for this fiscal year?
I'm not going to make promises I can't keep.
Okay, that's fair. Let's talk about housing. Connecticut's cost of living index is 121.6. Again, they give me these numbers, so I don't know that. Making it the 8th most expensive state in the United States to live in. The cost of housing contributes, obviously, very significantly to this high cost of living. As we face a shortage of housing and the cost of rents rise and many barriers to homeownership still exist, how are you going to work to address Connecticut's housing shortage and high cost of living?
Yeah, our high cost of housing is a real driver in terms of the high cost of living here in this state. We didn't really build much housing over the last 30, 40 years. We just got together with a lot of the business leaders, I don't know, 2 weeks ago down the street, probably more bigger businesses, and next to workforce, it was housing. And it's housing, Jim, across the board. I mean, it's saying, we were talking to Amazon and some guys early on. They said, we need to attract 20-somethings. These are single people. They need a vibrant downtown. They need a studio apartment. Talk to mayors or police, fire, cops can't afford to live, in their towns as well. I think each and every one of you knows how important workforce is. So I will tell you that we've got the wind to our back to this degree. For the last 30 years, not a lot of people necessarily wanted to move to Connecticut, so that was slowing things down as well. We had more new building starts in July than any time in the last 17 years. We have, and that's market driven. We've also done more affordable housing in the last 3 years than ever before. Doing everything we can to get our downtowns vibrant, make sure that these are places that young people can afford to live, or folks my age want to downsize, go into an apartment downtown, free up that house for somebody else. And I'll say one last thing, because this all gets wrapped up in the politics, and I think the best people to take the lead in terms of how we get more housing is at the local level. And I've asked each and every one of our mayors, what is your plan? How would you get more housing in your town? And to do that, I like to work with local control. I think that's the best way to do it. We build on the strength we got. Look at the housing here in New Haven, for example. And in this region, we've built more new housing in the last 4 years. It's amazing what's going on. It really brings the towns and cities back to life. And we got to bring our towns and cities back to life. I'll just say, all the hell that was COVID, I think some people did rediscover what makes Connecticut a special place. Remember, we worked hard to get things open, and first, remember, the restaurants you can take out, and then the restaurants you can eat outdoors, and, we did everything we can to get people back. And all of a sudden, you found out downtown Hampton is actually going on. Look at this on a Thursday afternoon or evening. The people eating outdoors made a difference. I think that's part of bringing our vibrancy back.
All right, let's. The other issue we face and continue to face is transportation. As we begin to see incoming federal dollars for infrastructure development, transportation continues to be an opportunity to grow the greater New Haven region, specifically with the continued development of Tweed New Haven, to ensure that our area is seeing a more competitive abilities to go forward. So what infrastructure projects are you prioritizing for Connecticut that will set us apart?
Tweed. Tweed had, one flight every 3 days or something. Now it has 19 different destinations. So I think we're making some progress there. You got to do that, understanding the neighbor's point of view as well. Bradley has more destinations today than ever before. So our location is one of our great strategic advantages. So let's just start with that. More broadly, thanks to this infrastructure bill, we've got significant additional resources coming into the state. And I know you're all going to go, yippee, free money from the feds. We don't have to do anything. No, not quite. We have to put up 20 to 40%. That's how it works, be it a competitive grant or not. But we've talked a lot about transportation over the last 4 years. I'd say a couple of things. One, when it comes to rail, let's face it, New Haven is the transportation hub of the state. So what we're going to see at Union Station, the upgrade there, we've already taken about 15 minutes off that commute to Grand Central just by getting more express trains there. And we're going to be able to speed that up another 15, 25 minutes over the course of the next 5 years. I'll tell you one reason why. The state is old. Everything seems to be really old. I don't know what they did with infrastructure for the last 100 years, but we got some catching up to do. So every one of those 100-year-old bridges that a train goes over slows down, then speeds up. It costs like 3 minutes or something. So we got 10 bridges, so you can do the math there. So that's priority 2, but also our roads and bridges. You got to focus on public safety. I was down in Greenwich when the Mianus River Bridge went down, and we had a flurry of activity to do something in terms of rebuilding things. Then we took our eye off the ball, which is our habit. But the DOT guys are pretty smart, because they're always going, we're going to build a 4th lane on I-9. No, you're not. And there's no way to do that. Nobody wants to do that. It's too expensive to do that. But you can look at the heat map on something like 95, 91, and you see those 4 or 5 or 6 exits where the exit lane is just too short, everything botches up, it goes back, and those are the choke points where if we can just spend a few billion of these resources we're getting there, we really can speed that up at the same time. And finally, get a few more cars off the road. We provided free bus service during COVID, and we've continued that at least through December 1st. And we've got more people taking our buses, especially in the greater New Haven ever before. Maybe we're getting a few of those cars off the road.
How is the electric car infrastructure program going?
Got a long way to go. But I'll tell you again, out of that infrastructure money, we're going to have probably 300, 400, 500 new charging stations over the next 5 or 6 years. The feds help us out on the federal highways, 95, 91, whatever. We're going to be complementing that, Jim, ourselves. I don't want anybody having range anxiety. We're going to do everything we can to take that off the plate. And it's sort of amusing to me. Now, the number of entities that are reaching out saying, please put a charging station in my location. For example, churches. They're saying, please, we got the parking lot here. One more reason to go to church on Sunday. You can get your soul charged up and your car charged up. So, and we're going to try and accommodate.
Okay. Inclusive growth. Prioritizing inclusive growth is vital for the business community to thrive, and ensuring that the BIPOC-owned businesses are succeeding and that economic development is equitable. As governor, how are you currently supporting inclusive growth and economic development, and what would you hope to do in the future?
Wear my 2 hats. Let me tell you first, as a business guy, we have 120,000 plus jobs that we've got to fill, and it's good news that we've had 30, 40,000 new families move in the state, but everybody, regardless of zip code, regardless of background, regardless of ethnicity, we've got to lift you up. I've got to make sure you get the skills you have. If I can't get those 500 laser welders at EB, I said that before, they're going to build parts of that submarine somewhere else. So let me just start. It's the right thing to do. It's also the smart thing to do. I'll tell you by way of philosophy and what I've tried, over the last few years is I'm not as big about just, handing out money. But I am really big on opportunity. And I've learned, talent is widely distributed. Opportunity is not. I come out of the world where you can get some startup capital, you have a dream, you can build out your business, watch it grow and expand. So we put in place hundreds of millions of dollars to help, we always used to give hundreds of millions of dollars to big businesses. Now we're giving co-investing with small businesses, help them grow and expand right in their neighborhood, help them keep going. We got Connecticut Innovations right down the street, incredibly successful. We got something called the Boost Fund. We put up $75 million. This is the way I like to do things. And we got the private banks putting up $75 million. I like to go in alongside guys who do this for real. And we're targeting small, mid-sized businesses. We're went to the Spanish American Merchants Association, going historically black, saying these are the type of funds that are available for you. Tell me about your business. Tell me about where you are. Tell me what your dreams and plans are. We'll help you with a business plan. That's my goal. That's how you give people opportunity and growth.
So part of the inclusive growth, obviously, is the greater New Haven region, which is poised for continued growth, as demonstrated by the continued development of Tweed, the cluster of the life sciences and bio companies here, and our institutes of higher learning. The support of the governor is critical to ensuring the region continues to be successful. How would you continue to support and invest in the growth of the greater New Haven region?
So we rested on our laurels, Jim, I think, for an awful long time in the state. That's why for 30 years we didn't add any new jobs. We had, old banking down in Fairfield County. Life sciences was, just getting going here in greater New Haven. Insurance, I thought, was resting on their laurels. We worried everybody in manufacturing was going to go to China. I think you've seen over the last, not just 4 years, but over a little longer period of time than that, I'm backing into New Haven, don't worry. Advanced manufacturing, the amount of growth that's going on there, fintech, totally revolutionizing the financial services downstate in the greater Hartford area. And this greater New Haven area is the engine of our life sciences growth. I think life sciences of the 21st century, what computer science was before. We were not that hot at computer science in terms of our academic specialties going back 30 years. We're one of the world beaters when it comes to life sciences. Remember Lexion? Oh my God, they're going to follow GE. They're going to go to Boston. They're doubling down here in New Haven. And that's Connecticut Innovations makes a lot of startup capital available in the life sciences right here in the greater New Haven area. And it's a virtuous cycle. The more companies we have growing and expanding in the life sciences in greater New Haven area, the more likely they are to come, because we have a better ecosystem going on. There's something else for your spouse to do. And, Boston and New York, they're out there pretty good competition. But we're a lot less cost with higher quality, or at least as high a quality of worker as anybody could ask for.
I mean, you alluded to the bioscience, which, as we know in the greater New Haven area, is really the driving industry with our universities and our hospitals. Is there anything specifically you see as supporting in the coming 4 years if you were elected governor?
My administration, we had a slightly different breed of cat. We had a lot of folks that came out of the private sector and entrepreneurship, not just the usual suspects. One was an amazing guy named Josh Jabal. Josh, started up a life sciences company, came up was COO for the state of Connecticut, really helped lead our COVID response. Really good guy. Now he's in charge here at Yale of commercial applications going forward. So I work with him closely. I know what immunology, I know quantum physics, I know all the places where we are, second to none. I work with the venture capital folks pretty closely, making sure they are better introduced to what we are trying to do. I went to Israel, and usually you go to a place like that and you got the lobbyist, and the lobbyist tries to, get a couple of companies to come to Connecticut. We put a little money in several of the biggest life sciences venture capital funds in Israel. Just saying, when you're thinking about coming to a bigger market like the United States, I know New York City is front and center. You ought to think about Connecticut as well. We, for all the reasons we've discussed, and we've got a few people knocking on our door. That's part of our growth strategy.
Thank you. Let's sort of shift over to small businesses now. I mean, obviously the biotech world is the bigger businesses, and we certainly want them here, as well as defense and the educational drivers. While it's key to have those large companies, small businesses are the backbone of the business community and often are the first to face the negative impacts in that community. Can you discuss the work you've done as governor to benefit the small business community?
Yeah, so I thought our whole economic development program was bass-ackwards. We were just over the last 10, 20 years handing out tens, hundreds of millions of dollars to incentives to big companies to come to the state of Connecticut, or please stay in the state of Connecticut. A, it didn't work, and B, I thought it was fundamentally unfair to small business, because if somebody did come in, they were stealing away the employees of small business. I've tried to turn that on its head, given especially my small business background. As you said, small businesses, mid-sized businesses, growing businesses, that's where you want to put your money. That's where you get the best bang for the buck. A, we will train your employees. I'm not handing out, $50 million incentives, but you want to come to the state of Connecticut, we'll make sure you have the trained workforce you need, and we'll do that as the state of Connecticut, working in alongside of you. We talked about the Boost program, some of the startup money. It's not free money. I'm not just handing out this money, but we're going in alongside of you so you have a partner there. We've got the close relationships with the VC community to help you grow as well. This was the most entrepreneurial state in the country, right? Going back a long time, guys like Eli Whitney and Igor Sikorsky. Then we just stopped. I don't know what happened. But something weird during COVID. Now we have more visitors to the state than ever before in 2021. We had more new business startups then. And my job is to see that more of them have an opportunity to flourish and grow.
Do you have a specific plan to attract businesses from other state? I mean, we see billboards all the time. Come to Florida. Your business come to Florida, or I've seen a couple. I think even one West Virginia. I think I saw a sign out there for West Virginia. Are we marketing to other states? Are we looking to try to attract business from other states because of sort of the key location that we are between New York and Boston?
I'll tell you a little bit. I don't do billboards in Texas. I don't know, but we put together something called Advanced CT. You know, after GE left, we didn't have a good relationship with the business community, and vice versa, or even worse, we had no relationship with state government and business. So Advanced CT is made up of I don't know, 60 or 70 businesses, large and small, and we do two things there. One, you know, if a company in the life sciences is thinking about Connecticut, you know, you can talk to me, but I'm kind of a homer. They kind of know that I'm all in for Connecticut. But why don't you talk to Alexion? Why don't you talk to Biohaven? Why don't you talk to some of the other people here? They're part of Advanced CT. Hear from folks in your space what it's like doing business in Connecticut. That's job number one. And number two, what we're doing is working with some of our bigger companies, saying who in your supply chain is maybe down there in Georgia or over there in Missouri you'd like to have closer to home. Because let's face it, we've learned a lot about supply chains. I certainly have over this last 3 years. So reach out to companies that have sort of a natural reason why they also want to be here in Connecticut, because they get you know, closer to the mothership. I think those are two of our biggest outreach. You know, and it's working. I mean, we've had 2 Fortune 500 companies move into the state of Connecticut. You know, we lost GE, but we got GE Appliances back. They're owned by the Chinese now, so that's not that great. But but anyway, we've had dozens of other companies move into the state of Connecticut, but I really am focused on our companies that are right here. I think most of your growth, Jim, is going to be growing and expanding the companies that are already here in the state of Connecticut.
Do you have any specific thoughts about what areas of regulation you think you might try to focus in the next 4 years to reduce and make it a little bit easier for the businesses? And we've heard a lot about some of the fees and expenses that businesses have to pay, all the licenses they need that are at the state level. Certainly at the local level, you know, you don't necessarily control that because that's municipality by municipality. But at the state level, there's a lot of regulation that's overseeing the businesses.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that and working with you know, Mark Boughton on that as well. I'll just say a couple things. I mean, you could talk about you know, our environmental standards are too high or too low, but what really aggravates me is how long everything takes. Government has a really bad case of the slows, and time is money. And so we have done everything I can to accelerate that. You know, we've got a website that businesses go to if they're coming to the state, thinking about growing the state, one-stop shopping. So if it's DEEP, which is environmental protection and the permitting you need, and workforce, or whatever those pieces of the puzzle that help your company grow, you go to one spot. We have almost like a valet service where we have one person who will be responsible for helping you get through that. You know, more broadly, I've just tried to, why do you have to do everything 1 year? If you have to get a license, how about 3 years? Your skills as a cosmetologist haven't changed that much in 3 years, I don't think. And finally, and this is not directly relevant, Jim, to your question, but when I was running before, and I come out of telecom and IT, everybody was always beating up on DMV, right? Oh my God, I had to take half a day of work. I had to wait in line for 2.5 hours. Some guy was leaning on a mop. They weren't paying attention to me. This is so typical of state government, right? So one thing I wanted to do, talk about speeding up government, is see if this is sort of one of the first direct interactions that middle-class folks have with their government is DMV, or 17-year-olds have with their government. Let's make it a little bit easier. Let's show what we can do. So, 2 years later, you can lie in bed sipping a latte on your iPhone, renewing your license. So that's what I mean by saying doing whatever we can to speed things up. We're doing that up in terms of business and business regulation. And I'm doing that with, poor folks who had to wait in line to do the Medicaid, then wait in another line to get their SNAP benefits, then wait in another line to see what they're eligible for affordable housing or affordable daycare, trying to make that easier for everybody as well and faster.
Well, this sort of dovetails on that before we get to your closing statement that you get to tell us why we're going to vote for you for governor next year. How do we deal with the declining state employee population that we have. Lots of people are taking retirement. Lots of people are not in public service in those jobs. So trying to speed things up on the state level, at least, much of that's going to depend on, are there bodies at those computers processing things?
Yeah, what a difference 4 years made. Probably 4 years ago, you were saying, why do you have so many people in state government?
I think I did.
You're a little top-heavy. We can do it with less. I'll say, look, we suffer from some of the same shortages as you've got in all of your businesses. I've made the biggest investment in IT, information technology, in the history of the state. So that for some of those, back office jobs, DRS, labor, we can do more with less, and you also can do it remotely. So that's one way we recruit and hire and keep. We got an awful lot of jobs that you got to be there in person. State police, corrections, nurses, and there I think our compensation structure is just backwards in this state. And I'd love to talk to legislatures on this as well at some point. A lot of our biggest benefit over private sector is in the benefits on the backside in retirement. And yet we don't compete very well when it comes to recruiting and hiring, upfront bonuses, and pay, to be blunt about it. So if I could turn that a little bit on its head, to be more incentives up front, so a young person can, get a little more money at the start of their career, better able for me to keep them, maybe give a little more on the backside of things. And secondly, I'll just, 4 months. It takes us 4 months to hire somebody in state government. You're a 27-year-old, you're probably trying to meet rent, and I'm taking 4 months, and you can go to that consulting firm, and they hire you at the job fair, and then they lease them back to us in DOT at twice the fee. I mean, it's insane.
Thank you. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left, and so my last question really is just a softball to give you an opportunity to explain to this group why it is that they should vote for you to be governor for another 4 years.
I love the job, and I think we're making a difference. I think that just listen to the nature of the questions. See how much has changed. What do you want to do with the surplus? We have had 4 balanced budgets in a row. And first one was barely balanced, but it was balanced. And it sends a signal. When you talk about business and development and growth, I was business. Give me some stability. Give me an idea this is an honest budget. Tell me that we're not going to go fits and starts and boom and bust over the next 10 years like we have in the last 10 years. And I think I can give people some confidence that we're getting our fiscal house in order and what that means. You're right. A lot of people want to surplus is just burning a hole in people's pockets. I did a debate the other day. They must have spent that 5 times over. I think the rainy day fund gives people some stability and confidence. I think paying down that unfunded pension liabilities that I talked about before is going to provide real savings for generations to come. I think it sends a signal. And I'm a business person and a progressive. And progressive in the sense that I think government can make a real difference in people's lives. And one of the first times in a long time, we have an opportunity to do that. We talked about the transportation funding we've got, infrastructure funding, what we can do in terms of affordable daycare and wraparound and expansion of learning and early childhood and programs to get our kids going from school to business and beyond, make it easier for our seniors to stay in the state of Connecticut. This is an opportunity to get it right. But I do tell all my commissioners, you've got some investment capital. I always had that in business. You got this now. With some of the federal funding we got, here's your opportunity. But I'm not going to fund stuff that doesn't work. So here's your chance. You got 2 or 3 years. Show us that you can make a difference. Show us you made a difference in the school scores. Show us you made a difference in terms of placing people in jobs. Show us that affordable daycare did allow mom and dad to get back to work. Then we're ready to continue showing that it's worth an investment worth making. And I guess I am an optimist. If you're an entrepreneur, you got to be an optimist. You don't believe in what you're doing, and nobody else is going to believe it. And I believe in the state of Connecticut. And I think a lot of people had lost confidence in the state of Connecticut going back 5 or 10 years. And I started my business here, and we raised our family here, got married here. So I was not one of those guys that wanted to go down to Delray. That's not me. I like Connecticut. And I want you to believe in this state as well. I want you to believe it's a good place you can start and grow your business. It's a place where you can retire comfortably and affordably. We did eliminate the income tax on pensions and 401ks, by the way. And I want to make sure it's a place that your kids can, know they've got the best education in the world and a place they can start a family and start a business just like I got the opportunity.
Thank you, Governor. It was a pleasure seeing you again today and answering our questions and being here for our chamber.
Thanks
again.
everybody.